The Broad Perspective Network is not responsible for the content of the following program. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Broad Perspective on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm glad you're with us today. I'm Vivian Kamori, and we're going to be joined in just a moment by our guest for today, Loweta Gonzalez. She is an amazing young lady, and we're going to be talking about self-love. This is different than the recent show we just did with our urogynecologists in Denver. This is actually about, and it might include some of that, but for those of you that follow The Broad Perspective, you'll go back in our archives if you're not sure what I'm talking about. But that was a very good thing. It was on the oscillator or something like that. Anyway, it's a very interesting show. We might touch on that, but mostly it's about understanding who we are, knowing ourselves, and how do we take care of ourselves. So I want to welcome you, Loweta.
Thank you. Thank you.
And tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have many hats that I wear, but right now I am, doing property management and launching myself into life coaching and motivational speaking. So that's my passion.
Okay, and what aspect of that is your passion? Is there a certain branch?
Self-love.
Self-love, okay.
Self-love and healing.
And what does that mean to you?
Self-love means finding balance and being gentle with yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And balance, what does balance look like?
Well, I think it's different for everybody. I think some people can navigate through chaos and still love themselves, and some people need complete peace, whatever that means to them. And I think it's more energetic. I think it's more aligning to your truth.
Okay.
Because it changes constantly,
And how do we find out what our truth is?
Well, I think truth changes.
Okay.
It's realizing that each day is a new experience, and what you thought yesterday may change, and That's okay. You just go with the energetic pull and flow, and there is no right or wrong answer. It's just what's right for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I think, for me personally, I think that a lot of us really, we can give external kudos to self-love. We can give a lot of attention to knowing who we are, but we really don't take the time to get down to the root of who we are, and because we really don't know ourselves. I'm reading a book right now called Everybody Lies, or Everyone Lies, or something like that. I wish I could remember the author's name, but it's a book about how even people, when they're lying, don't realize they're lying. It's not that they're intentional liars. It's just because they don't know themselves. And it's a lot of work to know yourself. But you see, I'm of the opinion that is the supreme commandment of all time. Especially, it was written above the doorway in the temple of Athena in Delphi. It was written, know thyself, know thyself. Number one commandment, know thyself. And you see, once you do, then lots of things make sense. But we don't. Most people aren't willing to do the work because it's painful. And most people think they know themselves. They think that they know all about themselves, and all they really know is their own ego. And even when we say we don't know, we've worked on our ego. Ego's not the issue. Well, it is. It is, or we wouldn't be having these issues. Because most of the time, when we react a certain way to a certain situation, we don't understand why that reaction is there. Well, we look to our past. We say, well, I was abused as a child, or I've been cheated on so many times. This is just a repetitive theme in my life. There are lots of excuses we can give to why we react a certain way. But even in the course of all that, we still don't know ourselves. And I'm of the opinion we come in with a certain vibration, a certain tune, if you will. And that doesn't really deviate a whole lot throughout our entire existence in this lifetime. We might move it up a little way, up forward, or we might move it backwards a little ways. But the primary vibration that we come into this experience with is pretty much the same. You know, you hear people say, well, he was born angry. Well, maybe that may be that person's primary vibration, just one of anger, and he might get better, or he might get worse, or she, but this still is still an underlying emotion that this person is going to go through this lifetime trying to figure out. Or you've heard people say, she is just a genuinely kind person, or a genuinely nice person, the core of who she is, or he is. And that's not, you know, there's going to be times when they turn into the Wicked Witch of the West, or they turn into Glinda the Good Witch. But it's still just a slight deviation from really who they truly are. And most people never take the time to understand who they truly are. Once you start doing that work, and it's painful, once you start doing that work, then you understand why all these things fall into place as they do, and why we react as we do. It starts to make sense, because you go, oh yeah, that's for me personally, whenever I was faced with hardships, I wanted to run away. I wanted to run away. I wanted to leave the relationship, move away, start a new life somewhere where it was going to be different and it was going to be better. And a good portion of the time, that's exactly what I did. That is exactly what I did. But I found myself repeating the same experience in that new situation, in the new relationship, in the new location, in the new work environment, the new whatever it was. There I was. I was still the key component to all my experience. I'm like, gee, here we go again. Well, and of course, what I do, I blame everybody else. You see, I blamed everybody else. Never looking at myself and going, okay, what is it about me that has once again walked into this experience, even with a new person, even with a new home, a new town, a new whatever, but I'm still having the same thing. I'm still having these same feelings. And it wasn't until I had those lots of them, deep, dark nights of the soul, and going, okay, so what is my expectation here? Why do I have that expectation? When I started realizing that and letting go of a lot of it, my gosh, life became so much brighter and greater. Go ahead, I'm talking too much.
No, it's okay. Well, let me go back to the ego part. I do believe ego can be our friend.
Yes.
I think that ego can remind us of when we're out of balance. I think that we use the word ego too loosely as far as not really understanding what it is, and I'm still figuring it out too. But I know that good ego happens quite often, and bad ego is very drastic. You can tell right away. But I think that, you know, self-love is a life journey. I think that we, like you said, we have to take those moments to be alone, to cry, to go to the dark, to see both sides. Because our day-to-day lives tend to be normal, and then we have something drastic, and then we start looking, what is this? What did I do to deserve this? Why are people doing this to me? And I agree with you. I've had so many cycles of bad relationships and emotional depression and just all these different symptoms of lack of understanding myself, understanding other people, and not really looking within. But I'm studying the gene keys, and it's very intricate, but it's based on your DNA that you know, some people believe that you come here knowing what you're supposed to do, and this is your challenge.
Right.
Well, this map actually shows you with your personality, with your gene code, what you were sent here to do, your life purpose. It's a very, very intricate program that I haven't figured out yet, but I'm studying it right now. And one of mine was self-love.
Huh.
And the shadow side of that would be self-obsession. Everything's happening to me. I'm a victim. You know, I'm just kind and everybody's just attacking me, which tends to happen quite a bit. But in my view, the way that I see things, I see things on a spiritual plane, and I try to come down to reality sometimes. And I see that, like you said, we attract these things. We what we think is what we get. What we feel is what we get a lot of the times. And so in my gene code, it showed that I would have to go through a lot of oppression and suffering, that was my lot, and that I would have to figure out how to find self-love through all of that. And it's very difficult, very difficult. And I'm just starting to understand it in some way. I think I knew more as a child that I felt, for some reason, I guess because I didn't know the full picture, I felt like I was okay. And it's almost like we have to go backwards. We have to go backwards to that child's mind, child's eye, of realizing that we're just discovering everything. Like, this is not a prison. We don't have to be stuck anywhere, you know? And I think that that's all we're doing. We're growing up just to go back, because I remember, you know, being a little girl, and the greatest day was just having these little fake keys to my bicycle and just riding free with no hands on my bike, like, ooh, I have skill, and just opening my hands out, and just, you know, that was like so enjoyable. And so I think that everybody else's junk comes in and tells us who we are and what we are and how we should live.
Exactly.
And then we start doubting ourselves, and then we're just completely lost.
Right.
I do it every day. I listen to my girlfriends. I've broken up with guys because of what I saw on the internet, you know, this means he's this,
right.
You know, and it's like, I should know deep inside, you know? So I think, like you said, taking those moments to self-reflect, to feel and know, to have your own tuition, to do your own life path, to study yourself enough to where you can kind of see what you want and what you don't want. And that's all we can do.
Absolutely, and well said. And a lot of it is also why we react the way we do when faced with different challenges, and what pushes our buttons. Because every button that we have, we've installed it ourselves. Nobody else installed those buttons. We installed them, and we allow people to push them. And we're going, we're flipping out over various instances. And what I might flip out over, you're going to go, what's your problem? And vice versa. Because we don't have the same buttons. We didn't install the same buttons. And so it's hard for us sometimes to understand what other people endure and go through. And I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of being, and there's a certain amount of judgment, and I'll admit it, being judgmental with people. I'm like, really, come on. You can get through this. This is not a big deal. Well, to them, it's a big deal. To them, maybe everything's a big deal for their own reasons. For their own reasons, but they would benefit from doing some of this self-reflection and self analysis and assessment. Yes, because everything is not a big deal. In fact, it's all small stuff. You know, you've heard that saying, "Don't sweat the small stuff," and it's all small stuff. It really is.
But it feels big.
It feels big.
It feels big, and especially when everybody gives energy to that. You know how they do healings and things like that. My favorite, view of when people come together to heal, like say someone's in the hospital and everybody gets together and makes food and flowers and cards, and all that healing energy usually helps the person get through, in my perspective. And they have, in Ethiopia, they have a culture where they come, and if one person in the village is sick, they all get together, do the same thing. It's like a party to heal them. And there's so much power in putting positivity in the situation.
However, yes, you're absolutely right. However, what about that person that is so hungry for that attention that they create the sickness, repetitive sickness, to have that kind of feedback? The drama queen, if you will, or the drama king. Yeah, those people that are so hungry for that attention and that approval, or whatever that is, that these conditions and diseases manifest themselves for more of the same. I'm seeing that a lot with people.
And I do believe that that's what basically cancer and diseases are.
Absolutely.
They're self-inflicted diseases. But, those kind of people, eventually people can feel and be intuitive. And then when they need them the most, no one will be there. And so maybe that's their lot. Maybe they need to go through that cycle. But everyone needs love. And I think all love comes from within.
There you go. And see, we spend so much time putting stock in that external validation and that external love. I know I have. I think most of us have. Oh, they don't love me anymore. Oh my gosh, I've been there. Who of us has not? Yeah. And I think in our world of duality, that's a very common thing, and it's not necessarily inappropriate, because we do want to have a loving relationship with a significant other. It starts off with having a loving relationship with our parents, and if we don't have that, then we're constantly searching for it with a spouse or another person of any kind. And the key with all that is recognizing that that might be why we are so needy and finding that love with someone else.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And so there's a lot to be discovered and a lot to be found. But in the meantime, we're going to take a break because we're out of time on this session. So we're going to be back with more of the broad perspective and Loweta Gonzalez in just a moment. Stay tuned.
Hello, I am His Majesty the Soul, King of Mauritius, and I invite you to help me build the world's planetary egg, an ecological geophysical galleon. It's approximately 180 acres, and it is home to 3,000 researchers from around the world. It is the world's first sovereign, planetary, independent jurisdiction that has the capability of advancing and progressing and fast-tracking every aspect of innovation, helping us redefine what it means to be human in a new world. So check out our website. It's www.mauricii.com. MORACEAE.com. I look forward to seeing you, and please contribute, donate to the GoFundMe page. I look forward to meeting you, and let's build the planetary egg. Thank you.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori, and today we are visiting with Loweta Gonzalez. We're talking about self-love, that which is as much of anything as understanding ourselves. And through that understanding, we gain more self-love. I know we beat ourselves up all the time. I do. Yes. I do. But it's really about understanding what we're about so we can love ourselves more easily, more simply, more honestly. I think honestly is the right thing there. I know that for me, I think once we're done learning all this, we don't need to be here anymore. Really, we don't.
We dissipate.
So we're just done. So, we shouldn't be sad when somebody kills over and dies. It's like, wow, they're done with this one, this go around. Okay, cool, If we want to prolong the agony and live to 122 or whatever, guess what? We still got stuff going through that we're learning. But we are here to experience life to the fullest, but I think also from the standpoint of joy. But also, it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% joyous, because there's no personal growth always if you're just constantly joyous. There's an addiction there as well. And I think understanding addictions, we all have addictions. We all do in some capacity or another. And it might just be, I'm addicted to love. Who is it, Robert Plant? That song? Might as well face it, I'm addicted to love.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's, and so much of our songs is about being needy, because we're not whole. The worst movie line, oh my God, is "You complete me." I despise that line, because there should be no one that completes us. People that can compliment us, can augment us, but not complete us. We need to work on being complete by ourselves. And I know it's probably just, that was in the movie, people, man, they just glommed onto that. But the reality is, we need to find out what it is we're missing that someone else fills. Now, relationships are nothing but work. I mean, they are work. If you want to have a good one, and you want to, at the end of the day, lay next to your partner and go, oh, man, I am so grateful for this person, for the love they've brought me today, and also for the lessons they've brought me today about myself. And that's when you've got a successful relationship, and it is constant, and it is ongoing, and it is work. And for people that say, I don't want to put in the work, well, then don't. then don't. There's nothing to be gained. There was something right before we came back from our break, Loweta, that you had mentioned that would be good for us to extrapolate on. Do you remember what that was?
Just, the art of allowing, like you said, that you can't really expect anything from anyone that you don't have for yourself. Right. And a lot of times when you pass judgment, it's something within you that you need to work on. And we're just mirrors, in this lifetime. But, because there were times in my life I was attracting just all these really unhealthy, sick people and all modalities, like either drugs or just emotionally just a mess. And I felt better in helping them. I felt better in looking at them. I felt like, oh, I have it so together. And it made me feel better to help. But I realized that there was some wounds in me from my childhood that I hadn't really addressed, and not so much addressing, it's just holding and comforting. Like, allow the shadow, like, you don't have to accept codependency or, really people who are unhealthy, but you have to embrace the pain that it brings up for you. Sure. Or the obsession to want to help them, because I've been obsessed in helping people and just giving. And so that's something that you need to realize and just hug yourself for that, because the compassion is one of the most beautiful forms of self-love, because if you have compassion for others, you can hold it for yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you made some very valid points there. I know that we want to be compassionate people and we want to be of service, but we can be so much so that we're not taking care of ourselves. And that's where it becomes dangerous. And I think probably most of us that tend to go overboard with that have experienced burnout. Like, I'm tired. I can't deal with another excuse or another person that can't honor a commitment because they had this drama, or they have a headache, or there's. I agree with you, and I think that this is the situation that I'm currently in, is that I think that we both give, and we're both very motivational people. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we're looking at each other with, I'm doing this, you're doing this, I'm doing this, I'm giving this, you're giving this. Right. And there's this measure. Right. And I am guilty. Yeah. I'm guilty because... Keep scorecards. Because we're taught to, don't put up with anything, you deserve this. But if the person thinks that they're giving you the love that you need... Mm-hmm. Of course they're going to be confused, because they're like, but I'm giving you then they don't more than I have for myself. And that's where it comes. I agree with you when you said the self-love, that when you recognize it, you can tell someone softly, hey, can you do this for me? Because I noticed this. When they're arguing and yelling, that's when people say, okay, I'm done. Right, exactly. Or I need. We have to be willing to voice our needs. But then again, don't be afraid. In fact, you must ask yourself, why do you need this? What is it about you that needs this? And ponder that for a while, because maybe you are making an unreasonable request, or maybe you're needing something that that other person cannot give. It's just not in their nature, and they don't understand it, and they will never be able to. Finally, when I realized in my primary relationship that what I thought I needed, and had never had in the many, many years I've been alive, that person was not capable of providing that, never would be capable of providing that, and I needed to let it go, my world just opened right up. Everything changed for the better, because I got it. I'm like, whoa, why do I think that I need or deserve this? It's because it was a validation that I'm okay, or that I'm cared about, or what have you. Once I did that self-reflection, because it's not about them, I was always disappointed that they didn't provide what I needed and asked for repeatedly, 1,000 times. This is what I need from you. And they could never deliver that because it's not who they are. Once I understood that and went back, it wasn't about them. It was not about them. It was about me. Why did I think my relationship would not be complete unless I had that one thing I needed? That one thing. Once I got clear on that,
I didn't need it anymore. Quite honestly, I never will need it again.
That's amazing.
I get it. All of a sudden, eureka, I've got it. It's not about them at all. At all. Ever, ever, ever. Never was, never will be, ever. Ever. And
wow,
that
that's
is
powerful.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is, because it all boils down to us every single time. Every single time. No matter how much blame we want to place on somebody else, and we can, but it still always boils down to us. To which I know the person listening out there in Radio Land, they're going to say, well, yeah, but my husband beats me. I don't deserve that. And you probably don't. You probably don't. But there is something that allows that to happen, number one. And number two, triggers him to do it, and you know it. Yeah. See, we all have to face that. If there's a button that he's installed, and you know that button, you know how to push it, you know when there's danger. So there's responsibility, there's self-responsibility. Now, I know there's going to be people that are not going to like any of this, and I don't blame them, because most of us really don't want to accept responsibility for something, especially something so heinous. However, there is so much power in understanding that. Because we can't fix anybody else. We can only fix ourselves. We can only make things better through understanding ourselves. That's where the power is, you see. And when we put our power and our responsibility, and most of all our blame, on somebody else, we've given them all our power.
No, I agree, and I know you probably will get a lot of backlash, but you know what? It's okay. It's called perspective. You know,
yeah.
Everybody has their own, and so what I was told is that a lot of times we get in abusive relationships, because I've been in them, where I had self-worth issues, and I was beating myself up about not being good enough. So then we attract someone that's a beater,
right,
that likes to physically show their aggression. And so, not saying that we deserve it, it's just a magnet. It's a magnet. It's
right.
just you're going to expose certain energies, and they have them, and so you're like, oh, you know, because abuse is not so much evil hell people. It's just someone expressing their deep-seated aggression and emotion. It's just an unresolved pain.
It is. Very well said. Unresolved pain. I had a situation recently. I have a girlfriend that's a psychologist and works at the prison. In fact, she used to be a co-host on The Broad Perspective. She was recently attacked by a prisoner in session, and for something he had asked her to do, and she had not had a chance to do it yet. So he took offense. Now, that's all I'm going to say about that. But it was very scary. She didn't get hurt. Everything turned out okay. However, speaking to another friend who spent 10 years incarceration, I was telling him about that, and he knows her as well. And he said, well, what you got to understand is, for that prisoner, that whatever it was he asked her to do, because when you're incarcerated, you come up with all kinds of weird things that are going to make a difference between your life forever and your life at that moment.
Life and death, yeah.
Yeah, it might be that hot dog you're going to get is going to keep you from starving to death. I mean, some mental thing in their head that is going to make a difference between A, somebody cares enough to follow through, and B, it might be the solution to them getting their sentence reduced or something. He said people that are incarcerated have weird expectations because they're desperate. And so he said, I'm not defending him whatsoever, but it might be that one trigger that threw him over the edge, because once again, nobody cared. That's his take on this. Nobody cared enough to follow through on something that, to him, whatever that was so monumental to the change in his life that he was expecting. Now, does that justify it? Does that validate it? No, not at all. None whatsoever. However, it does kind of explain perhaps a part of the dynamic that might have been in play there. And that's the case with so many things that we really want to understand, we try to understand, and we're playing a role in, we're experiencing, but we never take the time to look at it from that other person's viewpoint. Last night, before my husband has terrible work hours, he's perpetually tired, and I know he snapped at me before he went to bed. And we had a wonderful day, the little bit of time we had. But right before he went to bed, he snapped at me over something very trivial, and I was taken aback, and I'm like, well, that was uncalled for, Mm-hmm. But as he went to bed, and rather than carrying it with me the rest of the night, and my son said, "Mom, let it go. It's been a great day. Keep in mind, he's tired." And I got to think about that. I thought, darn right he's tired. Yes. And he's just exhausted, and something wasn't the way that he thought it should be. He's right. I need to let that go, because that isn't the core of what our whole day has been, nor is it the core of him. So it's that thing of being able to step back. Just step back for a moment. And it doesn't mean you excuse it. It just means you understand. Because we all do it. I do it. If I'm tired or I don't feel good or I've been asked for that one last thing that I don't want to deal with, I snap. I do it as well. We're still human. But I think that the whole thing about self-love is really understanding thyself.
Yeah, and knowing that you're going to be tested, because we have all these religions and thoughts and what we should be doing and how to figure it out. And I just think, the art of allowing, it's not as big as we think. I have these intense problems all the time because the many, many families I deal with. And I'm just like, did I attract this? They say you attract it. It's just all these rules and regulations, and you're sifting through it, and you just need to take it easy and realize that everything's going to work out, even though it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it. And that's the hard, this is the hard thing to do. Is like, you're supposed to be connected to your heart, but you feel like someone's
sitting on your chest,
away from you.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like you're in a prison. Like you were talking about the prison. I think we're more imprisoned out here than they are in there, honestly, because
absolutely.
It's manifested for them, but for us, we don't even see the prisons that we put ourselves in.
Right.
And forcing ourselves, I have to do this.
Right.
I have to treat this person this way, or I have to endure this. You don't have to endure anything. You can go sit in a cave and just meditate if you want to. We don't have to endure anything. And from this whole conversation and just listening to you, what I realize is that we do have to allow. We have to allow people to do their path, and we have to just be in our center and know that we deserve better. And I believe it will come.
Well, there you go. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back with more of The Broad Perspective and our visit with Loweta Gonzalez. Stay tuned.
The 12th Hour. A show literally about everything. A candid discussion between friends about their different perspectives on what they think may be going on.
Or what is not going on.
With so many different areas of information being given out, we attempt to put together the puzzle pieces to create the broad perspective of the whole picture.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori, and we are continuing our visit here with Loweta Gonzalez about self-love. And so she's going to give us some tips on things we can do, questions we can ask ourselves, procedures, who knows, whatever. Take it away, Loweta. What do you think?
Well, with some of my clients, I did some hypnosis, and not everybody's into that, but that's what worked for me. And I think I've done every healing modality, probably not possible, but a lot of them. And when I did this self-hypnosis, it was called timeline therapy. And so when I was done, I just stood up and I hugged myself.
Wow.
And we should be taught this in kindergarten.
Uh-huh.
It's okay to hug yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I put my arms like this.
Yeah.
And so this is my logo on my card, and it feels so good. You should try it. You just hold each hand across.
On the opposite shoulder.
And it looks like a heart. Like when you really hold yourself.
Uh-huh.
And it feels really good. And so that's one of my techniques that I offer people to just hug themselves. I mean, people look at you like, that's weird to hug myself. Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, you have to be gentle and caring towards you. And a lot of people, will be given money, will be given lovers, will be given, anything. And they just like, I don't want it.
Right.
Like they refuse to accept love, and that's part of why a lot of people don't feel loved, is because they can't see it around them. I mean, I've done a lot of self-work, and there were times where just being outside, I didn't, whatever. And now more and more that I want to dive into being present, being aware of everything. Just hearing the birds are like magnificent.
I
Like
know.
this is how we should live. And we're taught to not be happy as a natural state. And so we're all searching for this like we're talking about self-love, but really I think what we want is just a state of happiness continually, not like forever and never have any other moments, but just that genuine, like youthful kid happiness where you don't really have a care in the world.
How about peace?
Peace, yes, a peacefulness.
Yeah.
Peacefulness. And I think everybody is dealing with their baggage on such a high level these days. And we have so much stimuli, and we have so much finger pointing and aggression. And it's just like you can't get away from it.
Right.
Whereas before, maybe we were in the fields, maybe we were creating, maybe we were just being in nature, because for me, being in nature aligns me like no other.
I think that unfortunately what in our era as it is, what is being constantly thrown in our face is that you're not enough. Everything about the media, everything about everything is that you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough, you're not successful enough, you don't make enough money, you're not smart enough. Everything it's just constant. It is just constant. And we are enough.
And fear-based.
Fear-based. Everything is definitely fear-based. And now it's, if you don't eat right, if you drink the wrong beverage, if your water is too cold or too hot or too warm or unfiltered or filtered, or it's not smart water, or it's not whatever it is, then it's the wrong water. It's just constant. Yeah. It is constant criticism. It's all about marketing and media and exploitation, and yet we buy into it. And if we don't have the right hairdo, or we're not wearing the right clothes or the right designer things, then there is something wrong with us. And a lot of us fall into that.
I agree with you. And it's so funny how when we get all of those things that you're saying, or hey, somebody wants to be famous, they get famous, and or somebody wants a lot of clothes and they're a fashion designer, and then they get to a point in their life where they go find a monk or a guru or a spiritual teacher, and all they want to do is remove all of that and sit in a cave and live simple, and be humbled.
But you know what? It's for those same people, it's still not enough for them, because they still don't get it. They still haven't done the deep, dark work that explains who they are and why they are who they are. I see it all the time, and I see it with people that we would think would be so 24/7 happy because they've achieved it all. They've achieved the wealth, the notoriety, the fame, the good looks, the health, the careers, all of it. They externally, outwardly, it looks like they've achieved it all, and they are so not happy. None whatsoever. And when you look at the people who have achieved fame, now it's about maintaining that fame. And that fame, what came with them was a high for a moment, but then there's more. It's just not enough.
An illusion.
An illusion. And so then they have to also, experiment with drugs and alcohol and those kinds of things, because they need more, because they still haven't got it figured out that that's not what any of it is about, ever, ever, ever. And so it's a constant search, a constant battle for trying to find things. And it's no different in the search for spirituality. People have their own religion, if you will, their own belief system that is supposed to provide them peace and comfort, knowing that there is some sort of reward at the end of the rainbow, whatever that is, or for faithful service or devotion to whatever deity it is you've ascribed to. People are still searching for something different than what they are and who they are and what they have at this moment today. And that's where the challenge is understanding that today I woke up, and today I am who I am, and I woke up and I could hear a bird. and I could see my family, and I have a roof over my head, and I have food in my kitchen. There are lots of people who do not. And my parents, who are elderly and going through a whole host of gut-wrenching physical things, but every time I talk to my dad, he's like, I got it 95% better than most of the world. And he looks at it that way, and he means it. He knows it. He knows that he's very blessed that he and my mom still have a roof over their head, and they have food, and they have the ability to pay their bills, because there's lots of people that do not. And a lot of it is paying attention to what you do have and thinking about that and being happy with that.
And the power of positivity is so underrated, you know? Like, I mean, there's good things about media too. Sometimes I go on my Facebook and I see these quotes that are just so inspirational, speaking to me. And that's why I love to do motivational speaking, because it forces you to talk about something positive.
Right.
It forces you to think about things that are positive. And a lot of times, you know, you hear people's stories and you think you're worse off. And then you hear their stories and they're just vibrant and happy. And they have found that place to see through the illusion of suffering. And
Right.
suffering is what we all have done. Like, it's a human experience. But I think that we can all get through it. We can all get through it.
I think you're absolutely right. And you brought up something that to me is very, very important, and that is the positive thinking. I do believe that is important, but I don't think any amount of positive thinking is going to overcome a negative soul if you don't understand what that's coming from and what that's about. I hear it all the time, people that do affirmations and refuse to look at anything in a negative light, and yet their life is not charmed by any stretch of the imagination. But they refuse to look at it that way because that's negative. That's negative, and they're just not going to go there, and yet their life is a cluster mess. And so I think that, and we live in a world of duality as well, and I think that there is a time when the negativity is extremely important. Because if you're working on a project, and I learned this through the 1 Minute Millionaire, actually, that when you have a group of people working on a project, you've got to have all the people, all the energies there are important. And one of the very most important is the one that they will call, I think it was, let's see, the hare, the owl, the squirrel, and the turtle. Well, I think the hare, owl, anyway, the turtle maybe it was negative. Now, people say, oh, we don't want negativity around us. Yes, you do. You absolutely do, because that person is going to say, you know, this new widget that you are going to pay $10,000 to get the prototype, it's not going to work if you don't remove this button or what have you. They are able to look at that with an objective mind. Yes, you might call it negative, but it's vitally important to your project. And so I learned early on, when I had teams of people working on projects or events, that those people were extremely valuable and were not to be dismissed, because they had the ability to see things that many of us were not willing to look at that would make things better.
I agree. I think you're right about that, because this thought just came into my head about most motivational coaches and speakers. They all come from a really hard background or have suffered a lot.
Right.
And so, you know, I always thought, no, I can't talk about that because, you know, it's just going to be depressing. But I think that's where the beauty is that you can come from here to there, you know,
Right.
and it's still lifelong work. And to have that contrast, like you said, in relationships, I realized in my particular situation that it needed to explode so I can see what I'm putting in, what that person's putting in, what I don't want in the next thing, what I need to work on. That all helps. And so I don't look at it as a torturous goodbye. It's more of like, thank you
Exactly.
for exposing everything.
And that I could learn from.
Yeah.
Because really, you know, and I'm not so sure, but if we did a survey of all because people tend to think that wealth is the be-all, end-all, definitive nature of success. And if we were to look at all the wealthiest people in the world, would they describe themselves as hopeless optimists? I don't think so. Honestly, I think where it's at is realism. Mm-hmm. And if they see negative stuff going on, they're willing to own up to it. I think that this Pollyanna, I'm going to call it Pollyanna optimism, is only self-serving to a modicum of success.
I think I've been guilty of that.
I know
Just overly, just because, I mean, if you look out there in the practices, it's like, for me, I've been very negative at times, very,
Sure.
very negative and dark. And then I'm like, okay, I have to get myself out of this, which helped a few of the techniques. But then it becomes an illusion. You can't
Right.
even see that people are trying to do things to you because you're just like, everything's positive,
Exactly.
So I just think it's like, I guess it's just the yin and yang. You got to take both.
Well, exactly. You're absolutely right. But it also still boils down to knowing thyself.
Yeah.
You see, why does the negative affect you to such a degree? It's because that's part of you. And so there's a Debbie Ford who wrote The Dark Side of the Light Chasers.
I love that.
You got to understand your dark side.
Yeah.
And if you don't, guess what?
And keep it in balance.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
embrace it.
But-
I think
but
we're
know
so
it.
scared not
Of
to
course.
embrace the dark part, but we're like, I'm going to show everybody this light part, and then when
Right.
I leave, I'm
Right.
going to be all depressed and weird, and that's why people commit suicide, and they're like, that person was completely happy.
I know many, many people, and this is something to, I guess, ponder. They can't watch the news. They can't read the newspaper because they say it drags them down. That it's the stuff is too negative and so on. Therefore, they're not up on current events and so on and so forth. And I understand that. I can understand how you could. However, to me, that says that they still don't understand themselves, because in the perfect world, you would be able to look at that with empathy, compassion for people who are suffering and going through certain things, and still not have it affect you. Still be able to move on without any personal change in your own energy field, like the children being separated from their parents at the border. Well,
that affected
that
me.
that was very disturbing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like it at all. It breaks my heart because I'm very attached to my children. I can't imagine. Or the little boys being caught in the cave in Thailand. Oh, I can't imagine the agony those parents were going through. I feel that. I am compassionate. I pray for those people, that there's a good resolution to that. However, I can still go on with my day and move and function just fine.
And see, I've had problems with that. My sister was a social worker, and she would see these children coming in beaten and stuff, and I'm just like, I can't. I mean, I don't know. It just and maybe that's something in me that I need to heal, because I went through abuse, and it was just maybe something I need to accept and say, hey, this is part of the world, and it is a fine line that you have to accept, because you're saying accept what you see, but still have compassion. Accept what you see, but still have compassion, So
Exactly.
I guess it's just
and understanding. But you see,
journey.
you touched on it. You said it. It's hard for you because you experienced abuse. You see?
Yes.
Oh, eureka, there goes a light bulb. Now you can understand that, and now you can make that connection with why that affects you the way it does. You see, most people are affected. They don't know why. They don't take the time to try and understand it, and they just move through life in a state of depression or anxiety and try and mask it with
just ignoring it.
ignoring it or masking it with some sort of positive affirmation, which doesn't get to the root cause of everything. And I'm getting the signal it's time for a break, so we're going to come back with the conclusion of the broad perspective and our visit with Loweta Gonzalez. Stay tuned.
BPN. Join the awakening.
The Broad Perspective Network is a portal designed to reveal a new perspective and reality to those who wish to know the truth about the world we live in and our role in it.
BPN. See beyond the illusion.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Kamori, and this is the last segment of our discussion with Loweta Gonzalez about self-love and understanding ourselves and understanding who we are, what we're about, and
Our heart center.
Exactly. And people say, well, are we really going to change? Yes and no. Yes and no to that, because we still have that core. We still have that core of who we are. The changes are sometimes, they seem really great, but they still don't affect our core being. This is my opinion, such as it is. But the things that are good or bad in regards to that main vibration, I think they determine where we move forward next time through. I happen to believe in next time through. Today, I might not tomorrow, but today I do. And that we get to experience another lesson on some plane of existence. Maybe it's Earth School, maybe it's another dimension. Who knows? We don't even begin to understand all the dimensional possibilities that we can experience. But I think what Loweta and I are probably in most agreement on more than anything is the fact that until we really understand ourselves, it's hard to love ourselves when we don't know who we are. And when we finally start to get a clearer picture of who we are, why we behave the way we do, why things affect us the way we do, that's when the real power and dynamic part of our being starts to surface. And it is amazing and incredible. And that's when we start to walk down that road of joyous experiences. Because I don't know that people really understand what joy is. Joy is not getting the new car. Joy is not getting the new designer handbag. Joy is not getting the new boyfriend. Joy is not marrying the man of our dreams. Joy is a day-to-day existence in which we are in line with who we are and understanding why we are walking that path. There are always going to be challenges, but when we understand our role in that challenge, how we can move through it, how we can move through it seamlessly and effortlessly, that's where the real joy comes in. When we go, wow, okay, made it through that one. That was pretty intense there for a while, but I got it. That is where self-love and joy come in. And it's an amazing experience. Go for it, Loweta.
No, I agree. I think that a lot of people say you don't really live until you know your purpose. And, when I was having my children, when they were younger, that was my purpose. And I lived through that. And then I had to, they got older, and then I had to figure myself out again. And it's just like a constant figuring out of yourself. And, if you make someone else your purpose in life, that doesn't validate anything. And so in this time, what I'm realizing is that my purpose is to continually change, to allow myself to grow, to live in the moment. I did way too much projecting, way too much. Does this work? Does that work? This guru, this spiritual, all of these things. And at the end of the day, it's just aligning for me, source energy, and realizing that what I know today might change tomorrow. It might be completely different. Because when I look back 13 years ago, I'm like, whoa, I had a totally different religion, different, relationship, the whole thing. And like you said, joy is what I'm seeking. And it's funny because I would tell friends and stuff like, just be in joy. And they're like looking at me like, what? No, I need this money. I need that situation to change. I need that. Well, you can't control everything, but you can control the way you feel. Exactly. And I think that even amongst all the pain and suffering of the world, of others, of any situation you're in, you can find joy and peace. You can find it. And you have to search within yourself because it's in your heart. It's like It's like downloaded in your heart naturally. And there's tools and tips that you can do. Anything that makes you feel good. Like for me, the spa, a massage, beautiful music, dancing, good food, and just doing the things that make you feel healthy and happy, that are, quality type of things. And I think that in this day and age, if you don't know what those things are, you can Google it.
Right.
You know, some people love to, you know, thrift shop, just
Right.
find stuff and just, you know, everybody has their own personality and what they feel is comforting to their soul.
Right.
So that's what I think true self-love is when you have those wobble moments, you go to that place that allows you to find peace
Very
and
good.
joy.
Very good. Very well said. I'm so glad at the very beginning when you were talking about purpose, finding a purpose, because quite honestly, that drives me crazy in this New Age movement. Oh, the purpose-driven life. Everybody's got to have a purpose. And if you can't figure out what that purpose is, then something's wrong with you, and they're searching for their purpose, trying to figure out what that purpose is, drives me crazy, because I think whatever you're doing right now is your purpose. Whatever it is. Whatever it is, that's your purpose for that moment. And to constantly strive for something that you're not doing, or a lot of people say, well, my husband's a gourd artist, and he's an incredible gourd artist. But is that his purpose? Can he support himself or a family or whatever with his art? Maybe someday. But let's be realistic.
In Sedona.
Yeah, maybe in Sedona.
Dipped in
maybe.
gold.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, purpose is such a misguided word, I think, and I think it's overused and it also makes people feel really guilty. I haven't found my purpose. I don't know what my purpose is. Well, that's okay, because you're living your purpose. Your purpose is to breathe today. Your purpose is to make it through the day in one piece and connect with those people that are meaningful to you and feel good about your day. At the end of the day, you maybe have made a realization about yourself that you didn't know prior, and it might have been somewhat painful at that moment, but it is going to make such a difference in a very positive way as you move through life. And it's so transformational. Once you understand it, once you understand that recognizing these things about yourself is so transformational that, yes, while it hurts at the time because you didn't recognize that about yourself, but once you do, it just makes everything else so much simpler and so much more joyful.
Yeah. And just realizing that we are one. I mean, that's how we connect, you know, just talking to friends or family. We have such compassion. We're just such wonderful people. We're such a good human race. And I'm not saying we're perfect, but I'm saying that we have the capacity to get through anything. We have gone through long suffering. And without that self-love, we can't get through anything, you know? Or it's very difficult, you know? And what always just makes me feel like, oh, I can do anything, is seeing people who have been what others would describe as destroyed, either financially, emotionally, their whole family died, whatever, and they're still smiling. And they're still having a reason to move forward and move on, and that reality is not really what everybody has their point of view of what reality is. And you can transform it. You can transform pain into pleasure.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely you can. And that is phenomenal. And isn't that what we're all striving for? Because we're going to have pain.
Yeah.
This is Earth School. There will be pain. And for those people that think there won't be, good for you. I hope you don't have any, and that's okay. You won't have grown in this experience like some of the rest of us. But that is where growth comes from, is having that experience, but understanding our role in it, understanding why we reacted the way we did. What's the deal here? Because that is where the power and the growth come in. In the meantime, I want to thank you, Loweta, for joining us today.
It's lovely.
And I want to encourage our listeners to join us. We've been on hiatus for actually a period of time here. We'll get back in the saddle and bring you new content. We've been doing this for, probably 10 years now, so we have quite a bit up on the internet. You can always go back and listen to any of our shows in the archives. But in the meantime, and what did you... Okay, I can't get what you're trying to tell me. My sound man's trying to remind us of something. But anyway, check out our archives and join us at the same time, same place next week, where it's all perspective. Join us and broaden yours. Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed today's show. To keep programs like this and other programs on the Broad Perspective Network, go to thebroadperspective.com and click the donate button. We truly appreciate your support.